Welcome back if you are, and you are watching the video stream. Well, not video, the stream, the recording. We are back. We're going to talk about something a little different today. If you've noticed, we are now a couple episodes on the podcast side. We're a couple episodes into our new season. And actually, we're going to talk about today as we flip over into the sort of podcast mode here in a minute. And you'll hear a little bit more of this. You can see a little bit of the background kind of stuff that we're dealing with. Now, one of the things you've seen that I do want to mention that's sort of outside the podcast because this is visual, you may notice this backgroundy thing that we've got. And you'll also see one that Michael's got. Now, we're using Zoom as we record, so it is actually pretty useful for that. You may want to use like the live recorder, things like that, if you're trying to do a video, sort of like a video podcast on the YouTube world. But it is pretty useful to have something like this where you can throw your background in there. The nice things are you can have stuff like, over there, you can have some things that will brand your look. And that's going to help you quite a bit. And this is one of the things that we're going to continue as we go through this series, essentially, or this season of changes. We're going to talk about a few of these things. But that's just the visual stuff. So now we're going to flip over and talk more about the audio world. Well, hello and welcome back to those of you that are on the podcast side. We've just been talking to our video people and they've had to stare at our faces, so they have to suffer through that. However, you just get the dulcet tones of our voices. This episode, we are going to talk about basically production type issues. We've been talking about in this season Developreneur stuff, some of the things that we've been changing around. One of the things we've changed around is how we do the podcast. We've got our trusty friend, Michael, who has been doing taking over the editorial reins right now. Up to this, I did the videos, did the audios for the most part for the podcast, and then he would do stuff here and there. And I got into a pretty good rhythm and had a good process. But now, in handing it over, we're going to go right into talk to Michael about some of the snags and such that he has run into. So welcome, oh grand editor of all now. And why don't you just start venting a little bit about some of the issues and challenges you ran into this week.
Sure. So one of the biggest challenges I ran into this week was we found out very quickly that I did not have access to a lot of our social media platforms to publish. I had access to make comments, publish things, make some edits, but not actually publish videos or content. So we went through a couple of days of, what's this account? What's this account information? And when you set these up initially, especially when you're first starting out and you're setting up your branding, you're setting up your social media sites, typically you're going to write that down somewhere and you're going to save it in your Google or save it in some password reminder, and then you're going to forget about it. Except if you ever start growing or you add people to your business, you're going to need those again. So make sure you save those off. Use something like KeyPass or something, or put them in like a wiki somewhere internally that you can reference. That was just one of the kind of hangups we had initially getting started. The other fun hiccup I ran into, which kind of runs into what I go through daily, is software updates. So it's been a hot minute since we've done some video recordings, since we worked on the school.develpreneur.com, and I haven't really done a lot of video editing in a while, or even audio editing, and I found out that all of my software tools got updated. And being on the Silicon Mac, found out some of them don't work anymore, and I had to go download new versions and get everything set up again. So that's something else to keep in mind with, is make sure that you're constantly staying up to date on your tools that you're going to be using, even if it is checking on them once a month to make sure that they still work, because you don't want to be in a situation like me where at the 11th hour, I'm trying to cut something and all of a sudden, whoops, stuff doesn't work. And now you're starting to hit a deadline and you're like freaking out. And it's like, oh, crap. That was kind of the other thing I ran into. The other fun thing we ran into is I'm going deaf, apparently, because I can't hear half the audio that comes out of my machine. So apparently my speakers are set at max. So when you're doing audio edits and video edits, and you're trying to test things, set the volume as low as you can go to just hear things. And then as you're going through the process, crank up your audio within your tool and get it as loud as you can get without too much distortion. Then test on multiple devices. So I tested on iPhones, iPads, my phone. The problem I had initially when I first started doing this was I used headphones because I was not in a quiet space where I could just play through my computer speakers. And I found that these headphones I had actually had an audio booster in them. So I was actually hearing things louder than they actually were in the video. So we kind of went back and forth on that a little bit. And that was kind of the big issues I ran into getting things started. The other thing is, again, just getting comfortable with your tools. So I'm actually going out and looking for some newer tools because, the ones that I have kind of work now on the Mac SoCon, but may not be what we need going forward if I'm going to be doing a lot more of this all the time.
There's a couple of great little points there I do want to follow up on. The first one was the idea of the initial headaches, and it is a lot of us we talk about this all the time in the developmeneur world about automating stuff and building processes and things like that, and using the tools that are out there. The problem is that when you change everything, you've got to make sure that your processes also change accordingly. And so if you're like me, you automated this a long time ago, and the next thing you know, you have to change it. So now you got to remember, what the heck did I automate? And this is where we regularly talk about doing like maybe 6 months or once a year, do sort of essentially like an audit, or checking a pulse of your business, of what you're working on, what you're doing, what are the tools you're using. Now this has turned out to be a great opportunity because it's forcing us to go through this. So we have, as he sort of wrapped up there talking about, there's some tools that he's going to look at. Michael's going to go sort of look at what one thing may work better for us as an organization, but also may work better for him, because I have my set of tools and what I've been working with and what I've gotten comfortable with, but they may not be the best. They may be the thing that I've gotten used to, gotten in a rut. And now we're sort of forced, as I said, to sort of reevaluate and see what's out there. Same thing as when you're doing the automation process, is make sure that this is like a bad word to some of you, but document things. Have somewhere a list of what you're doing, how it's working, what it do. Maybe it's where the password's stored, or things like that. And you don't want to have it, on notepads on your desk, but you do want to have somewhere that you can look at it and say, if I want to hand this over, here's the 5 steps or the 10 steps I need to do in order to do so. If you've ever had something happen where you've had to change a credit card or bank card where you were using that for automated payments, you know the pain. You know that it's one of these things where you've got all these automated things going out, everything, and suddenly everything blows up because you swapped a different card, or something expired, and now you've got to go back and figure out where were all of those automations being done. So you could go through it the pain. Obviously, it's less painful for me. I just had to hear about it, but other than that, didn't have to live it. But assuming you're a solopreneur or something like that, save yourself the trouble of going through some of this and the being cursed by somebody else that's going through it because of you. And periodically just sort of like keep track of these things. Make sure it's easiest when you're building out the process, but then periodically go back and say, hey, did I change this? For example, did my passwords have to update? Did I update my password keeper? Things like that you can run into. Now, one things that we looked at that I do want to go into a little bit more on this is that we've now, as part of this, we've really taken a closer look, because we have shifted gears a little bit. We've taken a closer look at the podcast and what it looks like in some of its topics, and also the video, because in the past we've done more, it's always been screen shares. So I think I'll throw this to you a little bit. I'm like, what are some of the things that you worked with from the video side? Now, granted, podcast people, I know you're not seeing all of this, but there is a video side, and we'll be talking about in a way that hopefully will help you if you're doing a video or when you do a video. Thoughts, Michael?
Sure. So you're looking at kind of some of the I guess, challenges or differences between the video of like the presentation side of things versus the podcast?
Yeah.
Sure. So one of the nice things about it is the podcast, because this is a little more informal. It's just more of a conversation we're having. We're talking through topics. Uh, Coming up with the content, or I guess editing the content, is a little more streamlined because really we don't want to cut out too much, right? We want to keep as much in the conversation as possible. But when we go through like a course content, we're really trying to build the content in such a way that it can stand on its own. It can be its like an educational how-to videos, or kind of an educational series that we do. The trick with those is, like, if we're writing code, or we're showing code presentations, sometimes things go off the rails and the computer crashes, reboots, or we go down a rabbit hole and we spend 20 minutes doing something. That takes a lot more editing because you actually physically have to watch the entire video and go, okay, where did I make that mistake? Oops, caught it. But in something more like this, it's, yes, we still have to listen to it. Yes, we have to go through it, but it's not as labor intensive as much as it is to cut the like a how-to video. Because you and I have done this many a times. We'll be doing a presentation on Java or Python or Django, and we get to a point where we try to run the application and something breaks. Now, if it breaks in a way that we can kind of explain why something broke, that becomes an educational moment. But if it breaks to the point that, whoops, we're dead in the water, we really don't want to put that 20 minutes in the video. We want to cut that out and just really show what it is that the user is there to see. That's kind of the big two takeaways from that.
Yeah, that actually leads to a good one, that little tips and tricks, I guess, portion maybe of this. When you're doing a video, something that has, where you have some visual thing, visual cues are awesome. Sometimes there'll be things like people wave their hands. Sometimes they'll do like little finger counts. Things like that are very useful, and often are tips of the tricks trade, whether you're doing something that's going to be like go out on TV, or if you're doing a streaming of some sort or recording of some sort, that you're going to go back and do some editing, particularly if somebody else is going to edit it, because then you can have things you can always say, like, hey, if I do this thing, it means that as you're looking at it, then you want to jump ahead to the next time I do this, or something like that. There's cues that you can put in there that will help you out. A good example and then also from a video side, and a little trick that I learned because of the tool that I used with the editing side of video. It's not like a high-end tool. It's just like iMovie a lot of times, but below that you will see the audio, and you'll see the little jagged little things of your little audio moving along. Well, the nice thing is, if you do something that is a very sharp sound, like whether you can clap, or you could, like, some people will rap on a desk, or they'll tap their mic. Hopefully I didn't just mute myself when I did that. Another thing that I can video or audio do 3, 2, 1, and you will see like the peaks of that in the audio. So it's real easy as I'm scrolling from left to right across the, trying to jump through my video, is to say, oh, here's where I started the pause or whatever, and here's where I came back. And a lot of times there'll be things like, I'll have a very flat line. I'll shut the audio off for a while, or I'll just shut my mouth for a while or something. So you have a very obvious, those, like, boom, this is where I can cut it, and this is where I'm going to bring it back. So those kinds of things, you can do it whether if you're editing yourself or if you've got somebody else that's editing, is figuring out a couple of those cues and some ways to make it easier on the life of the editor, so they don't have to listen through the whole thing. And it's very often things like, hey, cut out the last 30 seconds because I didn't want to do it, or things like that, that if somebody's listening or watching, they now have a way to more easily edit out the pieces that you obviously want to edit out. So we've changed our gears around a little bit. one of the other things that we've gone into or that we looked at was it's two different people. And even though we've put together content now for several years and we've got sort of a rhythm, there is a difference between when one of us writes versus another one, or one of us speaks versus the other one. And one of the things that we went into this one was now Michael was doing a lot of the related blog work. And you hadn't really done much of these, particularly the summaries that we do and the synopsis that we do for the podcast or even the videos. Usually they've been more focused. So talk a little bit about that. What was your experience in taking that, the sort of like the meta content or the summary content and copy around these things?
Sure. So one of the wonderful things that we have because of Zoom's updates is we can now get transcripts from a lot of our video calls. And I'm able to take that and kind of to put that into like a Word document or something, just kind of clean it up so I can read it. Because unfortunately, Zoom is not perfect at the way that it cuts the text. However, still walk through the video sometimes, but some of the ones I just kind of skimmed through the text, pulled out some of our highlights, and went through and wrote some pretty good copy around summarizing not just what we talked about, but also including some additional links and bullet points to help the reader or of the podcast or the video kind of quickly pull out, oh, this is what it's about. I want to listen to this, or hey, that's something I'm really struggling with. And then at the end of the last few, I've actually started adding some additional links out to the developreneur.com and the school.developreneur.com to help give you more additional references to things that we do, things that we've talked about in relation to what we've talked about in these podcasts and these videos. The other thing that is kind of fun that I've enjoyed doing is it's like, oh, yeah, like we talked about the other day, building the business, the branding and stuff like that. It's like, oh, yeah, where was my link to 99 Designs? I've thrown some additional links out to our sites because, we're not just developer. We are developers. We live and breathe this every day. We are consultants. So it doesn't hurt to actually go out and check out and see what else we do. Maybe one of our side hustles or our other jobs is something that you do, and you may have something more personal or even general questions that we can talk about here for you.
And that brings us to a good close for this one is sort of that's what we're looking for. That is what we want to do is we want to provide you, all of you guys and gals that are out there, with some tips and tricks, just sort of frontline stories where that's why this episode, pretty good. Hey, we're starting a new, making some changes. We learned a few things. We've got a few bumps and bruises. So we'll share those war stories and some of the lessons learned so that hopefully you don't have to have the same bumps and bruises when you go through that. So that being said, we'll wrap up this little episode. We're cruising right along in the podcast world, season 21. Back, we're just getting started on this season. We're going to continue providing you guys. It's not a as much a continuous series of instructional as much as we're going to be hitting on a different topic probably every episode for this season around at least. As always, you can check out developreneur.com if you want some more information, or if you would love to see the video side of it and occasionally some additional content like there will be on this episode. Check out the YouTube, go out to Develpreneur, Develpreneur, or you can see that right. Look, getting better at pointing into my background. You can't see that if you're on the podcast though, so apologies for that. But check us out there on YouTube, Developreneur. I've got channels for different topics. We'll also have some here that you'll be able to catch up on all of the latest news. That being said, go out there and have yourself a great week, and we will talk to you next time. And now the rest of you that are still here, you get bonus stuff. And the bonus I really want to talk about this time is really because it's the audio, it's the video side and not really on the audio side. And it is about your recording. We are just like working our way through how to record these and what works best for us because we're not in the same room. We don't have the ability to be in the same room. And so one of the things we did last time is what Zoom does by default is that it tracks whoever's talking. That's the one that the video feed that you're going to see in a case like this. And so you may see me talking like this, and then when Michael talks,
Whoop, there we go.
there,
You hear me now? You also have to make sure
then you'll see his camera.
on the right cue.
Yes. We have to work on our cues a little bit, but that's okay. But one of the things I did, hopefully, is I changed over the settings this time. We'll see how this works. So you may have seen us split the whole time, maybe not. But those are things to work out if you want to do, something like this. Is understand the tools that are out there. What do they do, and what do you really want? Because there's a value in the ways that you may approach in specifically a video because you may want to have everybody apparent, showing up at the same time, particularly if you have 3 or 4 or 5 people. You can think about like the sports talk stuff where they've got, somebody in one corner and somebody in the other corner, another guy over there and another gal over there, or you may want to split them, or you may have some round thing that you want to work on, such as we've got here. So those are just some bonus things to think about. If you want to go into the video world where it is much different. Audio, it's pretty straightforward. It's like you've got an audio level, you've got your feeds, you can and there's things you can do there. You can do the same thing in the video world. It's just much more complicated. Once you get into video editing is a lot more complicated to deal with. Now, audio, you still need to deal with things like that your audio is set up correctly so that you're recording the right levels and things like that. But if you don't, a video again takes it to a new level, and it's not like just one level of new stuff. It's it is gargantuan levels of additional stuff because you have to worry about coloring and lighting and all of that kind of stuff. We don't have to worry about makeup, but a lot of people do, and it's things like that you may want to think about. I'm going to wrap up this one
I like that one
and let you guys get back to your.
Hey Rob, just one more bonus thing.
Go ahead.
One thing also when you're doing video recording and video editing, make sure you close a lot of your background applications that you don't need up, because the more processing power you have for your video recordings, the better. Video can be very CPU intensive, and if you have a lot of things running in the background, you can get a lot of skipping, a lot of voice cuts. So just something to be cautious about that.
That is, and I guess one final one. Yet a little bonus thing. If you're recording and you have in your screen, you're doing a screen recording or something like that, make sure you turn off notifications and things of that nature. I've had that more than a few times where we're doing presentations. If you're not doing something, presentation tool takes over the entire screen. Sometimes you'll suddenly see little pop-ups that are like, hey, so-and-so has just messaged you, or hey, you got email or something like that. So good things, good tips. And so if you've got others, definitely feel free to throw them down in the comment area. We'd love to hear from you. If you've got something you'd like us to talk about, or if you have questions about any of the specifics about how we're going, love to hear them. You can shoot us email, info@developreneur.com. But other than that, we're going to wrap this one up. Go out and have yourself a great day, and we'll be back here next time around on the channel. More cool information. While you feel free to check out all of the other information that we've got around here. And just sort of catch up. And if you've got any questions, let us know. Have a great day.